Do you think I've got enough? Well, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. As usual, I'll review and score objectively the characteristics. This isn't about what I like, it's about me helping you find the one, letting you know which ones have particular characteristics so that you can decide based on your tastes which one is the right one for you. I'll then look at the specs, that is the ingredients, the price, etc. And I'll wrap up by doing a ranking by each characteristic so you know which one is your winner. Right, well, let's get testing. The way I've split this up is the first lot have only peanuts as the ingredients. Second group have peanuts and sea salt. The next lot have peanuts and palm oil plus sea salt. And the last lot have peanuts, palm oil, salt, and some sort of a sweetener like a sugar or a brown cane sugar. In fact, the only two to not have sea salt are these two, the Skippy and the Sainsbury's Basics. I don't know if that makes a big difference to either the production cost or the taste, but we'll find out, at least in terms of the taste. The characteristics that I will be scoring for will be crunchiness, the size of the crunch, the creaminess, spreadability, softness of it, and then in terms of taste, the richness, the sweetness, and the saltiness. Right, so let's start with the Whole Earth 100% Peanuts Crunchy Organic Peanut Butter. These are all new, and what does happen to some of the peanut butters over time, I'm sure some of you know, is that the oil separates, they rise to the top. Giving this a good swirl now. So it doesn't have a hard crunch. This one has quite a soft crunch. The size of the crunch is medium, which I'm sure means a lot. I'll be able to gauge it better once I've tried it against another one. But it's not too big, not too grainy, but it's definitely there. It's very creamy, very soft. Its flavour is definitely very rich. It also has a good sweetness to it, even though it's not sweetened. It has a natural sweetness, sweet taste to it, which is very interesting. Saltiness, not very salty at all. Next one is the Meridian Crunchy Peanut Butter. Again, just nuts. This one's less crunchier. The size of the nuts pieces in this is smaller than the one from Whole Earth. It is more soft though, and more creamy and more spreadable. In terms of the flavor profile, I would say that this one is less sweet and less rich. Saltiness is about the same. Now we're moving on to the ones which have salt. So I'm expecting these to be a little bit saltier, obviously. So the Biona one has smaller size of the peanuts in there. It's also less soft, less creamy, less spreadable. So if you want a thicker one, this is much more thicker. In terms of saltiness, you do notice that it is saltier, and a little bit of salt is meant to bring out the sweetness and things. And I did notice going from the non-salted to this one that it's saltier, but it also brings out a sweetness. In terms of richness, I would say it's less rich than the other two. Next up is the Pip Nut Crunchy Peanut Butter. Interestingly, it's the first one so far to come up with one of these lids attached on top. It's definitely a lot more creamier and spreadable. This one is the least crunchy so far, both in terms of the amount of peanut, the number of peanut pieces in there, as well as the size of the peanut pieces. It's also a bit more saltier than the Biona one, and a little bit sweeter too, and a bit richer. Third of the way through now, but already feels like I've had a lot of peanut butter. I'm going for a tactical substitution of my choice of utensil here. I think this is smarter. I should have started with a spoon. So the next one is the original peanut butter from ManiLife. It's less smooth and less creamy than the Pip Nut, but still plenty creamy. This one has a much bigger crunch than the other ones before, other than the whole earth. There's also a lot more of the crunchy peanut pieces in there. It's also noticeably saltier. It's richer and has more of the natural sweetness as well. Now we are on to testing the ones which have palm oil but still no sugar. On to the Waitrose Duchy Organic Peanut Butter Crunchy. One thing I have noticed is that this one is a lot more beige in colour, less dark, less brown. This one has very, very large pieces of the peanuts, similar to the Whole Earth and the ManiLife. It also has a lot of those peanut pieces spread out. It's very thick, very, very thick. Quite salty, doesn't have as much of that richness that I've had with the ManiLife or the Whole Earth, nor that natural sweetness. Onto the Sainsbury's Organic Crunchy Peanut Butter now. This is the first one that I haven't had to swirl. There was no oil separation in this one. Similar colour to the Waitrose Organic one, very much paler colour, more beige. So this one has quite large chunks of the peanut, but there are fewer of them compared to the Dutch one. It's very thick, very thick, not very spreadable, but very thick. Noticeably saltier than the ones I've had before. It is also doesn't have as much richness or that kind of natural sweet tasting of the peanuts. Next up is the Essential Waitrose Wholenut Peanut Butter. Again, this one I don't need to stir, there's no oil separation. So this one has large size crunches, but they're the size of the crunches are very even. Some of the other ones had larger ones and smaller ones mixed in there, but these are all kind of very large. There's no smaller ones in there. There's a fair few of them. It's well distributed. In terms of spreadability, very thick, very, very thick. I felt that this one was quite sweet compared to the other ones. So far, mind. Also saltier, but less rich. So the last lot are the ones with sugar or something sweet added. The Essential Waitrose one and the normal Sainsbury's one, they have brown cane sugar added, whereas the Basics one has just sugar, and the Skippy has, again, just sugar. These two are not sea salt, whereas the rest are sea salt. This is just normal salt. I'd see if there's a difference or not. Again, no oil separation, very thick indeed. So the size of the crunch is, again, very even. They're all very similarly sized pieces of peanuts. Well distributed, but it seems like all of the Waitrose and the Sainsbury's ones so far have the same sort of size of peanuts in there, whereas some of the other ones had a gradation of bigger sized ones within each jar, bigger sized ones to smaller ones. But in the Sainsbury's and Waitrose ones, they're very similar. So like I said, very thick, so you can spoon it up and slather it on a piece of toast or whatnot. It's not runny like the other ones were. The sweetness is noticeable. It's a lot, and it's like a sweetness that tastes like sugar. It's not the kind of natural sweetness that I had from the peanuts. It does taste different. It is a different kind of sweetness. Feels like it's less salty, but I don't know if that is the sugar overpowering it. It's not as rich as the other ones. Next one up is the Sainsbury's Crunchy one. What I mean by the lack of oil separation is like that. You see, if you get one of the other peanut butters, and you know when you get a new one and you get the oil separation, can't do that because then you get a nice puddle of oil everywhere. So again, this one doesn't need stirring before you go. Again, with the size of the crunch, all the Waitrose and Sainsbury's one seems to have a very standard size of the peanuts in there. Similar distribution as the other ones. It seems to be less noticeably sweet than the Waitrose Essential one that I had. What I also noticed with the Waitrose one was that there were kind of almost specks and crystals of the sugar in there, so that every now and then, and the salt, every now and then I got a sort of like a bang of the sweetness and a bang of the saltiness. This one doesn't have that. This one's kind of more mixed in. So we've got the Sainsbury's Basic Crunchy to go now. Again, no oil separation, doesn't need a stir. This one's creamier than the other Sainsbury's and Waitrose ones with the sugar. Again, with the other Sainsbury's and Waitrose peanut butters, the size of the pieces of peanuts is they're very similar to each other. It's thick, but it's less solid than the Sainsbury's and the Essential Waitrose ones. It's creamier, more fluid in terms of the flavour. It tastes less concentrated, less strong in the flavour of peanuts. It almost has like some sort of a milky taste in there. It's just less dense or less concentrated in the peanut flavour. It's not too sweet or too salty, or at least compared to the others which have the sugar and the palm oil added. But I can definitely taste that it's less strong in the flavour of peanut. It tastes mild. It tastes like there's something else there. It's not too sweet or too salty, but it just tastes less peanutty. It has some sort of like a mild fatty richness that kind of reminds me of some sort of a condensed milk kind of flavour. It's very familiar, but I can't pinpoint it. Kind of like the kind of flavour that you get in the bit between the custard creams, the cream parts of the custard cream. That kind of just mild sweetness. It's interesting. It's very interesting. Definitely weaker in the taste of peanut, the flavour of peanut. Right, last but not least, Skippy from across the pond. This is the one that I used to have as a kid. Very nostalgic. I haven't had it in a long time. It's what I used to have in the morning with a bit of jam in a bread roll. There is a bit of, not exactly oil separation, but there's like a crack between the top and the layer, and there's a sort of something seeping around there. Right, but again, not big amounts of oil separation. Doesn't need a stir. The peanut pieces in here, slightly smaller compared to the Sainsbury's or the Waitrose ones, but they yield much easier. It's almost like they're crunchy but less strong. So kind of like the difference between a cornflake and a rice puff. Like the rice puff is still crunchy, but a little bit of pressure and it just crumbles away. The peanuts in here are kind of like that. Similar to the Waitrose and Sainsbury's ones, the size of the peanuts are very similar to each other in there. Very thick and slatherable, not fluid at all. It's not as sweet as the Sainsbury's Basic or the Essential Waitrose ones, but it is noticeably saltier. In terms of the peanut flavour, not that strong. This one kind of, when it touches your tongue, it almost melts away. It's been just over 2 hours now since I've started doing the tasting. Off screen, I've been going between all the different jars of peanut butter to try and do the scores as best as I can. I weighed all the jars at the start and at the end, and I've had about 220 grams of peanut butter, which is about 1,400 calories worth-ish. I am peanut buttered out, my friends. But it's amazing how different they are. Not just between each other in terms of flavours on a similar price point, but different between the different price points as well. The more expensive one versus the less expensive ones. Between each brand, between each sub-brand like Sainsbury's Organic, Sainsbury's and Sainsbury's Basic. And it has been, I've never done this before, and it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Now let's talk rankings. So higher the ness of whatever characteristic it is, the higher the number it'll be. If you like your peanut butter to be crunchy, go for the ManiLife or the Waitrose Duchy. The Whole Earth is a close second. If you want it to be less crunchy, the least crunchy, go for Pip Nut. That had the least amount of peanuts to bite down on. The Waitrose Duchy and the Whole Earth had the biggest peanut sizes. Pip Nut had the smallest. So if you're looking for something that has a very, very little bite to it, then Pip Nut is the one to go. Those peanuts in there were very small. In terms of spreadability, Pip Nut was the most fluid. That was almost like a cream kind of viscosity. I put Skippy second because it held its shape well, but with a bit of pressure it really slid around. The least spreadability, the least creamy, the thickest ones were the Waitrose Crunchy, the Essential Waitrose Wholenut, and the Essential Waitrose Crunchy. So those are the ones to go for if you want it thick. In terms of the richness of the flavor, ManiLife was by far the richest. It had the most peanut flavor in there. Sainsbury's Basic had the least, so if you want something that tastes less of peanuts or just is maybe lighter noted, that one is the one to go for. For sweetness, Skippy is the sweetest. I've also put a highlight for the ManiLife because out of the ones that didn't have sugar added, that had the strongest of the natural sweetness. If you want a non-sweetened peanut butter which has the sweetest taste, then ManiLife is the one to go for. If you just don't want any kind of sweet taste at all, then Meridian is the one. In terms of saltiness, Skippy is the saltiest. Pip Nut is the least salty of the ones with salt. Just if you're looking for something that does have salt but is the least salty, that's the one. Otherwise, the ones without salt, Whole Earth and Meridian, they're the ones. My personal favorite was ManiLife, hands down. It had the richest flavor. It was naturally the sweetest. It was maybe a little bit too salty for my taste, but then I don't have a high threshold for saltiness. And it had a lot of crunch and a lot of bite, which I enjoy. I thought personally there wasn't too much difference between Waitrose or Sainsbury's for each category. I didn't think neither the Sainsbury's Organic nor the Waitrose Organic was that special. I thought for value, the Sainsbury's Crunchy one was good. In terms of taste, it had a good taste, good amount of crunch, not too sweet, not too salty, a pretty decent taste of the peanut flavor. And although it was sweetened, so it's a different comparison, I didn't think the other characteristics were worse than the Sainsbury's or Waitrose Organic ones. On something that's not sweetened, I thought Essential Waitrose Wholenut was really good as well. Good strong peanut flavor, a good amount of crunch, a lot of which I personally like. Although considering that it's an Essential Waitrose product, the price is the same as the Waitrose Organic Duchy line and more expensive than the Sainsbury's Organic. But it also has a higher peanut content, which might be part of the reason. I liked the Wholenut because it had less of that palm oil taste and texture because it has the higher peanut content. So I actually preferred it to the Waitrose Organic one, which is actually the same price. I couldn't tell too much difference between the Biona and the Meridian, other than the fact that Biona was salted and it had a slightly richer peanut flavor. Whole Earth was a close second for me. I really liked Whole Earth, but I do think that for me personally, just like butter, a little bit of salt goes a long way, which is why I prefer the ManiLife, as well as the fact that ManiLife I thought had a stronger peanut, deep roasted flavor and the natural sweetness as well. Sainsbury's Basic, that one is one that I would recommend everyone to try once, just to see if you can tell the difference, because I thought it was a very interesting experience. It really tasted very, very different. Different in the sense that its flavor profile itself was almost different. Not like different like it was less sweet, less salty. It was just something altogether different within the confines of peanut butters. In terms of price, ManiLife is by far the most expensive. Sainsbury's Basic is by far the cheapest. Between the other Sainsbury's and Waitrose products, there's not a huge amount of difference. The interesting thing is with ManiLife, Biona, Pip Nut, Meridian, you can get bigger packs of those, which brings down their prices significantly. Whereas with the Sainsbury's and the Waitrose ones, they don't really have that option, so you can't bring down the price of those too much. And then you could also buy some of the other ones on offer. I don't think the Sainsbury's and Waitrose ones have as much offers on them. The prices on there are per 100 gram. Since all the different jars have different sizes, I thought the price per 100 gram is the fairest metric to go by. So you might decide that you have a staple go-to peanut butter that you have for the cupboard for your daily peanut butter and jelly time. And you might decide to splash out on one of the fancy peanut butter presents to yourself, which I definitely think is worth it every now and then. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this helps you decide which peanut butter to get. A very important life decision, I might add. Maybe it's the one you get already. Maybe there's a different one, a new one that you haven't tried yet. I know that these aren't all the peanut butters out there, but I think a dozen is a good start. The discussion on the very interesting things that I noticed doing this test will be linked in the description. Leave a comment if there's something that you'd like to see reviewed and compared next. Thank you very much and have a tasty day.